very good morning to you and welcome to the show. This is New Day, Saturday edition with me, Abnat Tabi. We're live on TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7 and we're streaming online around the world at 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We will be running from now till 9:50 when we'll draw conversations to a close. But by then, would have had a great show interspersed with some exciting, stimulating conversations, which of course would have some spells of, disagreements here and there, but all in all, a great show promised for you this morning. We encourage you to be a part of our conversations. Don't be left out. Let us have your comments, your remarks, your contributions in any way, any form. In respect of the topics I'll be outlining very soon, to our WhatsApp number 050-06-07070, and we will be happy to share them with the rest of the world. Coming up on the show this morning, we'll be looking at the president's encounter with the media. Now, you do know that the president this week had a second encounter with men and women of the media. It actually happened on Wednesday, 17 January 2018. Now, this came after the first encounter, which was organized in July of 2017, last year. Now, the encounter was to allow the president to respond to questions on the performance of his government 1 year after assuming the reins of power. Now, considered a laudable initiative offering the benefits of consolidating the gains made in our democratic dispensation, the event received commendation, just as media encounters under previous governments have received commendation. There, however, were some criticisms about the organization of the event itself, the format of the event, the quality of questions asked, as well as the quality of the responses by the president. We shall be looking at the president's encounter with the media and the matters arising. Also up for discussion this morning is the Cash for Seats parliamentary probe that is ongoing. Now, the parliamentary committee looking into the Cash for Seats saga went into week 2 of its sittings this week. And appearing before the committee this week were Mr. Ashim Morton, the president of the Millennium Excellence Foundation, Ambassador Victor Behu, the chairperson of the foundation. Now, however, the 5-member committee had to suspend sitting on Tuesday because none of the expatriate businessmen and women invited to testify before the committee showed up. Questions are being asked. What could have contributed to the no-show? Can the committee compel them to appear before them? Now, what happens to the committee's work if they don't have the powers to compel the attendance of these expatriates, men and women, and the expatriates fail to show up a second time? We shall be looking at proceedings of week 2 in respect of the Cash for Seats parliamentary committee sitting. Next to be discussed will be the police interception of some objects suspected to be handmade grenades and the subsequent arrest of 3 persons. The Odoko Divisional Police Command in the Greater Accra region this week arrested 3 persons after intercepting some objects that were believed or suspected to be explosives of various types. And this activity or interception was on a tip-off. Now, in a statement signed by the Director General of the Public Affairs of the Ghana Police Service, the police indicated that it was investigating the matter and it was doing that in coordination with the relevant agencies. They also went on to assure the public that they had the situation under control and urged the public to remain calm. But the question is, how does the public remain calm when sections of the media were reporting that the objects intercepted by the police were grenades and not that they were suspected to be grenades? So outrightly, we had those news going out, and of course the public couldn't remain calm. Now, we'll be looking at this grenade or bomb scare this week to determine whether or not the situation could have been better handled or handled any differently, right from information handling within the police service to information sharing with the public, whether social media and indeed the traditional media were circumspect in their reportage. These are some matters arising from the story we shall be looking at closely in the course of the program. And then we will talk about Ghana's petroleum agreement with ExxonMobil. Now, the background to this is that in the year 2010 or thereabout, news broke that ExxonMobil wanted to buy a stake or take over Cosmos, one of Ghana's Jubilee partners. Now, however, the move was said to have been frustrated by some political powers, and again, there were even some reports of near diplomatic clash between the U.S. and the Republic of Ghana. Now, 8 years down the lane, ExxonMobil has finally arrived in Ghana after signing an agreement with the government of Ghana and the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC. With this agreement, ExxonMobil joins other international companies in Ghana's petroleum upstream sector, including Tullow, Cosmos, ENI, among others. The entry of ExxonMobil into our economy could potentially be positive. However, some experts in the industry and industry watchers are or have complained about the mode by which the agreement was consummated. Now, the Minister of Energy is said to have dispensed with the requirement for a competitive tender pursuant to Section 10.3 of the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act of 2016, that's Act 919. The Ministry of Energy, however, maintains that the agreement was entered into by way of direct negotiations, which is also allowed under the law, rather than competitive public tender due to reasons including but not limited to the quality of or nature of the oil block in question. Now, although the minister has the power to dispense with the competitive public tender and resort to direct negotiations, the lingering question is, how is such discretionary power to be exercised by the minister to ensure that the principles of transparency and accountability are not undermined or disregarded? We shall be looking at this into detail when we return from this short break. You're watching NewDay, Saturday edition. We'll be right back.
This is what it feels like. Every single act of alleged corruption labeled against any member of my administration has been or is in the process of being investigated by independent body.
Was it a conspiracy theory?
Is there any way we can have cashew roast?
You're one of the leading lights for all kinds of good reasons, looking for companies with best practices to come here and also participate in the development of our energy sector, especially enhancing the Ghanaian participation in the energy sector.
We gave them 10 o'clock to appear before us. Unfortunately, we've waited up until now. It's 10 minutes after 11. None has shown up. So we are unable to continue with the work of the committee for the day.
We believe the objects to be grenades of some kind. An investigation is underway to quickly establish the nature of the objects seized. I wish to assure you and all Ghanaians, as well as the international community, to remain calm as we investigate this matter of police seizure.
This is what it feels like.
Welcome back. You're watching NewDay Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online on 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I will quickly introduce the panelists for today's conversations and we'll get straight into today's business. From my extreme left is Mr. Osei-Bonsu Amwa, Obi Amwa for short. He is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Ekwapim South Constituency and also the Deputy Minister for Local Government and Rural Development. Next is Mr. Bobby Banson. He is a private legal practitioner. And lastly, we have Dr. Clement Apak, Honourable Member of Parliament for Bulsa South Constituency. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
It's been a while since I saw Honourable Obi Amwa and your good self, Doc. So it's good to have you. Bobby has been in here quite a lot of times these days, so exactly.
Now,
Yes.
Parliament is in recess. Of course, those who are ministers, they have their additional responsibilities. But
Right.
those of us who are members of parliament,
You go
there's
back.
always a time you go back to interact and be with your people.
Exactly. I hope
And
also
I
South
just came
people are
back from
doing well.
Musa South. I just came back
Great.
literally about a week ago.
Okay.
So Bulisana Pusifu.
I miss that one.
He started his campaign.
And our park ladies, they are graduating today. A number of them are graduating as hairdressers.
Very
So
well.
I wait them
Congratulations
well
to
and
them.
for
That's fine. Okay, so we'll get straight into it. We have a number of issues to look at, but limited time, so we'll just get to it. We'll start with the President Meet the Press encounter. I believe the Media Foundation for West Africa did a very nice review of it, but we'll be looking at other matters that have come up, as matters arising, issues about what the President had to say about procurement and savings made in respect of certain, contracts or under sole sourcing arrangements and all of that, payment of contractors and other matters. I will start quickly from Honorable Obiamwa. Let's have your view on generally how things went.
Well, thank you. Good morning again to viewers and to my colleagues here, and to you especially. We haven't seen you for a long time.
Exactly.
Even though I've been watching you. Well, if you ask me, I would say that it went very well. Went very well in the sense that I'll put the whole event in two categories. First part being what the President told the whole world. How he has led the country for the past 1 year, and how he's keeping his promise about meeting the media or organizing such an event for every 6 months. The last one being in July 2017. And then the facts and figures, the information that he gave to the media, which made some of us very jealous because we thought you should have waited to bring it to us in Parliament, State of a Nation. But it's already giving you the State of a Nation as far as the past year is concerned. So it went very well in that sense, and it's a bit surprising that it appears the emphasis has been on the questions that the practitioners came to ask, and whether the questions were tough enough or whether they were relevant or... But I thought probably the information he gave or the kind of data he provided, the analysis, statistics, everything, probably the media didn't have much to say or ask. So that's how we ended up that way. But he touched on almost everything. And our debt situation, the economy, energy, special prosecutor, everything that you can think of, free, senior high, employment, how we've managed to save a lot of money through prudent management from the public procurement authority side.
But that in particular has been contested seriously by the opposition NDC.
Well, we are here to interrogate it. If they raise the issues, we'll respond. But, I mean, on the whole, if you want to summarize, it shows that the country is being run very well. I would hope and pray that we will improve on what has been done so far, and that come 2020, when we're going to face the electorate, the performance will be so good that there will be no comparison at all. Sometimes you may be a bit complacent, you do well the first year, and then you start slacking, or you think that that's the best you can do, and then the average person is not impressed. But if this is the trend, is how we're going to run this country, then I can assure you that there are better days ahead, and Ghanaians will not have regretted at all electing President Kufuor and the MPP to run the state of affairs. If you permit me, some of these figures, the President even said they are boring, but they are very relevant. Boring for probably those who don't like maths or statistics, but that is the state of the nation, and we need to be told that once we are told, obviously we will know whether the government is doing well or the government has still a long way to go. For instance, if you have 11 billion arrears, when you come into office, they tell you you owe 11 billion, and then you cause audit and review and validation to be done, and at the end of the day, you know that not just the Auditor General saying that we can only certify payments for maybe about half of it. But the rest, we have to reject it. And then you get to the potential savings of about 51%. Then you see that you save it. Otherwise, it's most likely if the same government had been in office, they would just go ahead and start paying. Because after all, we incur the debts, so go ahead and pay. But it's the kind of savings that we are talking about. Now, the public procurement thing. I have seen documents, huge documents, and then with huge figures that for no reason at all, MDAs will apply to PPA that want to just handpick one company to supply or to do these works, when the sole source is supposed to be exception. To that extent, you don't go for competitive bidding. You don't invite others to come and prove that they can provide the services at a cheaper rate. And then you end up with so much on our books as debt. And the president tried to compare their figures. In 2016, if you talk about sole sourcing, about 98% that were applied were approved. Figures: 622 requested, 597 approved, 25 rejected, 98% approved. The same trend with restricted tendering. Restricted tendering, selecting a few firms and telling them that come and quote, and the same trend, 15.15% approved. And if you compare with our situation, 2017, it almost even, 56% approved, 43 rejected, which means that PPA is not just becoming just approval institution, approval institution, but PPA scrutinizes some of these things. And the most critical thing is the savings. If you're able to do this, obviously you save the nation a lot of money. 145.7 million Ghana cedis, $146.2 million. And just for the first year. And some of us have experienced it. Some of us have been following PPA activities for a long time, to the extent that we even ask questions in Parliament about PPA. And if you look at the annual reports, and if these 2017 figures, which are yet to be submitted to Parliament, are the correct figures, that means we are doing very well when it comes to even public procurement. And that's how we save the public purse.
But you see, Dr. Park raised a point which is relevant, though, but to push that issue further is the president's, reference to statistics here is fine, but it doesn't tell us whether or not those approved were, because in times past, there's been talk about the fact that certain contracts didn't meet the requirements for sole source, and yet it was approved. So here, the president is talking about those that were approved, those that were not, but we are not being told those that were, as it were, perhaps didn't merit or didn't need to be sole sourced, but yet were approved. So that really doesn't give us any picture, especially when in 2017, there's record of the NPP also having done the same thing in terms of sole sourcing being approved by the PPA and some not. So
we have, in the first place, nobody's saying that sole sourcing is illegal.
Definitely not.
It will depend on the circumstances, exigencies of the time. Number two, thankfully, by the Public Procurement Act as amended, we now have the Act 914. Thankfully, they will have to submit a report to Parliament. Some of us used to complain so much in Parliament that 3 years, 4 years, we will not see the report. Thankfully, we will push for the report to be submitted, and all the details will be provided. Which company applied, and what they wanted to do, why it was rejected, or why it was approved. So,
for instance, when the president says that in the year 2016, the PPA had 622 sole source requests, 597 of that number were approved. That approval, we have to take it as it met every requirement, so that everything in there was watertight, was correct.
No, for 2016,
yes,
that's what happened at the NDC. And that's what we were criticizing, that you should, looking at the figures some of us have seen, for instance, if you want to procure street lights, and then you think that there's only one company which can provide street lights, and then you write from the ministry to PPA, the PPA also approves it. So the PPA approves it. So in the president's remarks here, he says this number was approved. It doesn't tell us whether indeed, like the example you're given, which clearly is not a situation where sole sourcing, exactly, but it comes under the heading approved.
So we are not being given the fine details
I'm saying that if you pick the 2016 report vis-a-vis 2017, the details will be there. But the president was not going to the details. The president was more interested in how savings have been made and how PPA has been more diligent and scrutinizing some of these things.
Very well.
You understand? So, in that sense, it helps all of us. And I'm saying that I'll give you an example where there are some items that people can provide, but you pick one person to come and provide it. Or even restricted tendering. You have a situation where a group of companies would be put together and then say they are going for restricted tendering.
The same
person.
Well.
We've heard of these things. Yeah. And some of them very fantastic figures.
That's fine.
So if we keep throwing the light on PPA, and they can use this to save us a lot of money. Of course, Ghana, the government is the biggest procurement entity.
Exactly.
And if we don't do our procurement well, things will be going down the drain. Right. Something that you can buy for 5 cedis, you end up buying for 100 cedis because it's only one person who's supplying it, when others can do it.
Right.
So very good thing. There are lots that we can still talk about.
We'll definitely talk about it. Yes, because it's one of the things we've highlighted here. Thank you. But I'll move to Bobby at this point. Again, on this procurement issues and the savings that we are being told has been made in respect of this. And again, my question about how this, statistics, as the president has put out there, lacks or doesn't give us those details that we would need. Of course, without recourse to the reports Honorable is talking about, you wouldn't get those fine details, but perhaps it would have been, more beneficial to the people than indeed the general public if we had been told that, yes, even though PPA approved this much in this year, we still find certain areas or certain questionable areas here. Then we would be putting the spotlight on the PPA. Otherwise, then we would say that the 98% of sole-sourced contracts in 2016 pretty much met every requirement, which isn't the case according to what we are hearing.
Yes, sir. Good morning once again to your viewers and listeners, especially to all Santa Clausians who will be meeting this morning at 10 a.m. at St. Monica's Anglican Church for a very important session.
We'll bring you a bill for the announcement.
But my major problem with the organization of the president meeting the editors is fortified by the introductory remarks by Honorable. He said some of the parliamentarians felt jealous because they felt that it looked like a State of the Nation address. And it's so because the president spent more than half of the time addressing the country of what has been done and what he intends to do. And that is why the questions that are being raised now, the editors or the media practitioners who were there could not raise. I didn't have the opportunity to watch or listen to it the first time, but after it I had the opportunity to watch it. You'd realize that very few of the questions asked were asked based on exactly what the president had said that morning. 90% of them, the media personality, the people came with their prepared questions on issues not directly related to what the president was saying that day. If I believe the president had made they had allotted about 80% to questions, I'm sure some of these things may have eventually come up. That is why the figures have been churned out, but they do not paint the exact picture. The president could definitely not have used that platform to have provided all those details. Like Honorable is saying, those details will be in the report that is supposed to be submitted to Parliament. Perhaps if the president had reserved most of these things to the State of the Nation address, then it would have given a lot of opportunity for these questions to be asked. Be that as it may, with respect to the procurement, I listened to the contracting issue and the savings done in the energy sector. The contractors, I must admit that I'm not very conversant with the facts as to the savings. I know the Contractors Association also have come out to say they've not been paid, the need of savings. But what I can speak to is on the savings made on the energy issue with the procurement as it relates. Right. So the savings, as has been said, it's not as if the monies were due to be paid. And the Auditor General has said the work has not been done, so do not pay.
So there's some aspects like that.
Okay, so with the energy...
The arrears where people are claiming that you owe us so much. We've gone to audit.
No, I'm talking about only the energy. Yes,
okay,
the contractor. That is why I said that one. I don't know. I don't know the details. So I'm talking about only the energy sector.
Right.
So what I know is that with the power agreements, it's over time, and so I know, for instance, averagely it's over a 13-year period that these companies were supposed to supply the energy.
Right.
So it's not as if the work has been done. The government comes into power, evaluates the energy situation, and says that we will not need this much over the period. And so come sit down, let's all agree that it was like something like a fallback situation, that in case the country faces the problem we were facing the past 6 years, we don't have to go through that stress. We already have people committed to provide us with that energy, and then we will pay. And the government, in its wisdom, looks at the situation and say, let's cancel, let's terminate that agreement. No because you have not done the work, you will not necessarily be entitled to any form of a judgment debt or nothing. And so that one is very easy going. It also leaves the room for, I know some of the negotiations left the room for, if there is a need for us to come back to the table, we may give you the right of first option. And so that savings that have been done is contingent. Saving that 11, I've forgotten the figure with the energy sector. So that is what I can say. So that $7 billion. Yes.
Yeah,
so it's yes. I don't think
the impression that the president sought to create
was
that all of these savings.
I will come to you, Dr. Park. Dr. Park.
I did not get that impression.
Yes. Well,
I did not get that impression.
Yes, don't speak for him yet. I'll come to you.
I'm only saying that as a matter of fact, and this I know from my, work, that these are the savings that the government has made in the energy sector, as it were. And so if the government looks at some of these things, and then they say that we have looked at it, we think that we must not, if indeed, and I'm sort of waiting to see if anything like that will come up, if indeed the Auditor General, is the Auditor General that does the re-evaluation, and then
this was more or less review.
The review, but is the Auditor General?
Is the ministry.
Okay,
and that's it together with the party.
If my inclination is that if indeed that activity has been done in breach of any contractual obligation of the government, those who have been affected would sue.
Sure.
Or will take them on. I'm very sure about that. So if they have actually done the work and they've not been paid, and there's a change of government, for which reason the new government says we are evaluating it, maybe you overpriced, and so you are not entitled to the amount you've tendered in your certificate, we will not pay. I'm sure the contractors will sue.
Definitely.
So far, I've not heard any claim like that. So I want to assume that it was done rightly until there's any further evidence. So if indeed these steps have been taken, as Ghanaians, we are all happy when government saves money. Sure. Everybody, no matter the government in power, your aim, every manager of any business, taking the country as a business, is to minimize expenditure and then make profit. So if the government has done the right thing, we should all applaud them, except that it should not be twisted as some other communicators of the government are trying to twist it. But I didn't see that from the president's.
So you didn't see that coming from the president, but you think subsequent to his delivery, some people have sought
to create the impression as if something untoward had been done.
And that's how come.
Yes, it's been. So that is my take on the Procurement Act. I have other. Very well.
Sure, definitely we'll come back to you. But I will go to Dr. Park quickly here on that procurement bit, because your side has been very vocal in this respect. You claim that was what the president sought to do. But you've heard, obviously, Mr. Obiamwa is not of that view. You've heard Bobby here also saying he didn't get that impression, even though he agrees that some communicators of the party have gone on to make it seem as such.
Abna, let me say good morning to you again, and say good morning to my colleagues, and a happy new year. It's very important that I also look at the totality of the president's encounter with the media, even as I seek to immediately respond to some of the issues raised. And I think it is very important that we put matters into perspective. I was actually very happy that lawyer explained the dynamics in as far as the savings made in the energy sector is concerned. Because the impression that is in the public domain seems to suggest that those savings have been made out of potential setups that were seeking to be detrimental to the interests of the state. And therefore, the assumption or presumption by some was that there was some wrongdoing, which somewhere. Is not the case. So it is very important that we put this in perspective. But see, we have issues with the way and manner in which the president, we believe, sought to hoodwink Ghanaians for several reasons. Because first of all, remember that not long ago, you know, we passed the budget, and all of the things that the president talked about, as big as they are, and the impact that he sought to convey, one would have expected that at least they would have seen a space in the budget. But that is a whole other issue for us to discuss. Quite clearly, as was indicated.
No, let me understand that. So you're saying...
Most of these things that the president is talking about, I didn't see them reflected in the 2018 budget.
Like
because
what, for
they will
instance?
have implications.
Like what, for instance?
The savings you are talking about, the contractors that you have paid, all of those things would have implications. And I think that is a point that we are not averting our minds to. But as the days are going by, we'll begin to compare what the president conveyed at his Meet the Press and vis-a-vis the budget. And if some of the figures and numbers that he has provided now should not have implications for the budget, that is a matter that certainly we will look at. In any case, if they are all in the budget, why did the president see the need? Why did the president see the need?
The president give us an update.
An update.
Honorable Obama,
yes.
Please allow him to conclude. Dr.
I am making a
don't
point.
engage in that because your time is running.
I know, it's
Carry
a
on,
strategy.
yes.
but in any case, when the president throws out these figures and talks about you know, the validation and authentication of contracts, and he even mentioned the fact that certain claims that were identified had been claims for no work done. All of these things are very serious matters. And you would expect that action would be initiated. Because you can't tell me that if you become aware of a fraudulent attempt by somebody who hasn't done work for the state, seeking to take resources from the state, action should not be taken. And that's why we have said, what the president could have done for all of us is to have provided the details. It is not sufficient because he's the president.
Details of
the claims that he has made. He is not just an honorary citizen. He is the president. So when he speaks and he complains about allegations being made against his government, and yet he makes allegations against a government before his, without providing specifics, that is worrying. That is why we have said that we need details. Which contracts have been inflated, by what percentages, which are the beneficiary companies, when were certificates presented, who are those who process those certificates, on what grounds and on what basis was determination made that these are fraudulent claims to be made. All of these are important for us to have a much more rich discourse. And sometimes I don't blame the president because, you know, he ran on a certain theme, a certain mantra, and it is quite clear that government is struggling to keep his head above water in terms of the rhetoric and the deception that was used to hoodwink Ghanaians. And of course, the president, rather than allowing the media to do most of the talking, he ended up doing most of the talking. And a lot of media personnel, you know, felt that the time was not worthwhile. And as far as the invitation was concerned. And if we are to go into the specific questions and the responses that the president gave, then it is clear that the president was caught off guard on a number of basic issues that one expected his handlers to have averted his attention to. I mean, how could you not remember the Jamafer report, for example?
Well, some people have said that some people have said that was honesty on his part. I mean, he's not, you know, expected to know everything,
he should know some of
and that's why he has ministers at various, you know, other various sectors to deal with those things. But anyways, you're done with the procurement.
Well, yeah, that's the procurement part. But now I want to speak briefly about.
I will come back to you on that.
The procurement.
Yes, but I will exactly on that. So we'll move on. Just a minute. But you want to take us. You want to start us off on that on that dimension, is that it?
Well, yeah,
I could carry it. Yeah, definitely. So
I don't mind at all.
Yes.
Well, first of all, if you looked at the way the program itself was set up, I thought that the initial announcements or pronouncements by the Minister for Information gave a lot of hope in terms of the decision to broaden it, and as far as media houses and media personalities from outside of the dominant
regional representation
areas are concerned. I thought that was a good addition and innovation. And indeed, he started the program by trying to give, those from far the first bite of the cherry. And we also saw the attempt to ensure that there was gender parity where women were also, I would like to choose my words advisedly,
were given the opportunity. No, they were not favored. They were not favored. They were given the opportunity as well.
Given the opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah.
In any case, it is clear that along the line, something changed. And whatever the reason may be, I don't know. We began to see that the conditions, or if you like, the rules of the game were being altered and adjusted as the game was proceeding. And then we heard of the fact that there was the need for His Excellency to go and attend to another important matter.
But that announcement was made, right from the start, that the president had that, so let's do this really fast. Yeah.
But the point I'm seeking to make is this. If that day is for the media, then one would have presumed that at least the president's handlers would have arranged matters in a way that would have allowed him to spend good time with the media. The program would have been structured in a way that would allow him to make brief comments, rather than essentially what many are seeing as a prelude to the State of the Nation's address. So the media, on the one hand, didn't have time to ask a lot of questions. And unfortunately, the few opportunities available, the verdict is clear that some missed the opportunity to ask questions that were relevant and important to the well-being of our nation. It was a lot more like praise singing and, worshipping. And I think that certainly didn't. Well, of course, it was clear. You heard some of the questions.
That the media, when
some
they
media,
worship the president,
I didn't say the media.
Insult to the media.
You can't turn the media against me. You heard the question.
No, you carry on.
And you know fully well that the verdict out there is questionable. But we had some very fantastic questions.
Exactly, there were some very good questions.
We had fantastic questions. You don't determine the agenda for TV3.
Yeah.
We had some fantastic questions. I thought that the question on Gitmo 2 was a very good question.
We'll go to that.
And it was very important.
We'll go to that.
I thought the question by Mumen on security, which was not even captured in the president's prepared statement, I thought was a very important matter as well. And so if we have to dig...
Exactly. Like I said from the start, the Media Foundation for West Africa did a fantastic review of it. And of course, the questions we're talking about came in as two of the three most, I think the relevant questions. So those were the three, in their view, so it came up. And we'll be looking, I don't want us to look at, the questions per se, because that would take away from, the discussion. So perhaps let's hone in or zero in on some of the issues that came out strongly, like the youth unemployment issue and the fact that the president couldn't back, certain things he said with certain figures, and how that has become an issue. Bobby, looking at that issue, for instance, historically, we know that the levels of youth unemployment, we've never had accurate data. And that is a bad thing on us as a country. How do we deal with it? So I don't think this is, if you like, a flaw on the president necessarily, but rather we're looking at the bigger picture, because like I said, Ghana Statistical Service constantly has issues with these things, but perhaps it means that we need to be doing something, as opposed to making it seem like in the past we could have had, we had certain figures accurate and now we don't have, so it's telling on a particular government.
The reason why that answer by the president has been projected is that in our country, employment or unemployment is a major political issue.
Right.
In 2016, I think it was a minister in the NDC said they had created over 1 million jobs.
The numbers are always thrown around.
the question was, were these 1 million people Ghanaians? In 2017, a very high-ranking member of the NPP said they had created over 100,000 jobs. So the question that was asked, I believe, was a high-ranking member of your party has just said not so long ago that you've created over 100,000 jobs. How many jobs have you created? The president, for me, was very fair and honest. He does not know the figures as he stood there. Ordinarily, it would have been, okay, he's being honest. But because unemployment is a political issue, it gained a lot of media traction. So what it means is that if any minister under this government on any platform goes out to say that we've created this so many jobs, the minister will be pushed to provide the evidence because the president is saying, I don't have the figures. Maybe they will prepare later and present it. It is because the MPP government, which is a very right thing, has stated that they've taken steps to provide youth employment by food for job.
Planting for food.
Yeah, planting for food. That has been their major.
There's a nation building.
Vanguard, but there's a name for it. Youth something, nation building.
Yes, core. The builders core.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Those are their two platforms.
There's the
one district, one factory, and all of those.
The 10 million seed fund for.
So we assume that once they've stated that they've said that they've started these, interventions, there would be a data, and we don't have that data.
Then it questions how
whether or not those projects have actually been started.
Right.
Because during the NDC time, when they were asked to prove those figures, I remember there was discussion about this. There was a platform that was being handled by a joint agreement between, I think, one of Zoom Lion's subsidiaries and the government. The NDC listed all these interventions as the reason why they are coming out with the 1 million figure. The MPP has come out with their interventions, some of whom we've just mentioned. If the programs have actually been rolled out, then there should have been a basis for some form of data. But if the president is saying, I don't have that data, it's us to question whether or not those programs have actually been rolled out. But if we go beyond politics to address the national issue, you see, every employee in this country is supposed to pay SNIT, or every employer, whether private or government, public, is supposed to pay SNIT. So the SNIT data for me would be the basis. So SNIT can say, before 2017, we had 100,000 people on our data. Between 1st January 2017 and 31st December 2017, the figure has moved from 100,000 to 150,000.
That would be good if indeed SNIT was paid for.
Yes. So then it will be a basis to say that at least 50,000 people have been added to the employment grid. Now, SNIT, if you don't pay SNIT, it's illegal, it's unlawful. And I'm sure some people on this Saturday will be at the SNIT court facing that challenge. It's unlawful. But that will be a basis. The second thing is that under our Labor Act, every district is supposed to have a labor office. That's right. Every month, they are supposed to prepare a data. Now, the problem of whether or not these labor offices are even functioning, they only come out when there's a strike or there has to be redundancy, where they have to be negotiated and all those things. But as to whether or not they are being resourced to do their work independent of party politics. Because I'm not sure, even if these programs are rolled out, and this is not limited to the MPP, even the NDC, whether or not these people who will be employed under these social interventions even go to the labor office to register, whether or not SNIT is being paid on these people, then if these two conditions are met, then we would be fulfilling the legal requirements on employment, and then we would give the Ministry of Employment the needed background or data to be able to come out with these figures whenever they are asked. Until we do this, then every political party in power will be churning out figures, which will be very difficult to compare or to verify.
And then some have also argued that if you don't have the baseline, it pretty much defeats your efforts at even, increasing the numbers, because then you don't know what you're working with. So how did you come by your projections? So there are all questions coming up, and perhaps it should make us, realize that it's important that we begin to look at the possible data sources that you're talking about, and the fact that those things will be helped if people are compliant with, for instance.
That is the only way.
That is yes, quite relevant. I mean, are you concluding on that, or
yes,
I can move on?
Yes.
Very well. So, Honourable, about the youth unemployment figures.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a point about the fact that the impression is being created that the president took all the time and it was. But if you checked, president took a little below 30 minutes and 1.5 hours for the media to ask questions. That should be put on record. The impression should not be created that he took half of the time, he took 2/3 of the time.
But maybe if he had taken 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that would have given them more time. But 30 minutes is quite a long time.
As a media person, if president is giving me all this information, I will even value it more than the one question I will ask him.
But you see, Honourable, not to cut you, just a minute, Honourable, not to cut you. There's this argument also that, yes, this was for the media to come and ask questions on the president's performance. So then presumably, the media is going there already aware of what had happened. It's not for the president to now tell them that we did this. In any case, the president said this isn't a time for self-adulations. So I wouldn't have expected, or I didn't expect him to go
speak at all.
Not to speak, but to take that much time.
No, I think he even truncated what he was required.
Oh, thank God!
Yes.
Then it means then.
If I had my own way, I would have expected him to even give more information, because the problem we have in this country, when I watch TV, I listen to radio, is that we tend to just harp on a few lines that somebody would have put across, and then don't go in for the actual information. And if he's giving us up-to-date figures, vis-a-vis even the September one, which was provided in the budget, everybody should be interested. And based on even what he has provided, you can then ask questions from that. You understand? But if you, with all due respect, if you come and ask questions about whether Ghana has a vision or not, or development plan, you'll be off tangent, because everybody is expected to know this. You understand? So that is just by the way. For employment, I don't think that anybody expected the president to say we have employed 500,000 people. I don't think anybody expected him to say that. And he did not want to put his minister for employment on the spot, because you have to support it with facts and figures. You understand? And we should not also create the impression that we don't have sources of gathering data. Statistical Service, Ministry of Employment, as you said, SNIT, GRA, all these institutions, even the banks.
But
even the banks take the trouble to.
But it depends on what you're
collate
looking
some of these
for.
things.
It depends on what you're looking for. The bank, yes, may be a source, but in this respect, for instance, it wouldn't necessarily be an accurate basis to look at, because I mean, how fantastic to have those,
but they
find
these things.
They do.
Just
but
recently, I was reading a report from Stanchart, and they had done fantastic work on how people are being employed based on some factors, and they appeared very accurate. But I'm saying that if you look at other sources, the other sources are, but we should also appreciate that we have the formal and informal sector. If you say you've registered 200,000 persons for planting for food and jobs, some may be in that industry already. Some too may join. So you have to get your data in an accurate way before you come out with some of these things. Otherwise, the same media will go back and say that the president has given us wrong figures. And it was very safe for him to say that, I cannot give you the figures now. I don't think anybody expected him to mention 1 million and go to sleep. He has to provide the details. And he avoided it. So
but the question then is, yes, he couldn't provide the details there and then, but assuming
it doesn't mean he cannot provide the details.
But assuming we gave a month's, notice that let's have accurate details of jobs,
Certainly, the institutions are doing it. That's the work of the Minister for Employment. As I said, we take it from GRA, they take it from SNIT, they take it from the banks. They look at the various sectors, the formal and informal. Because if you go to Makola now, it will be difficult for you to say, these are the employed and these are the unemployed. You understand?
Definitely.
Because of the formal and informal sector. Somebody sits there, he sells scratch cards, he thinks he's gainfully employed. So these things come in. So as for the figures, we admit we should make more conscious effort to let the average person know that these are the indicators when it comes to employment, because it's done elsewhere. They will tell you unemployment has gone down by this percentage, and we've employed so much by this percentage. But their system is more formalized than our system.
Right.
And we should be working towards making us more formal. But you cannot take it away from the average person who thinks that once I'm farming, I'm okay.
Very well.
Those things come in, and putting the figures together becomes a bit of a problem. But I can tell you that for the labor front, you heard them giving us 80%, 80% for doing so well. And they are also happy because even for pension fund, we've transferred so much. And for 6 years, it wasn't done. For 6 good years, I don't know what the NDC was doing. They were keeping the money for the labor unions.
Very well.
Now that has been transferred, and they
seem very happy, and they are singing praise. Dr.
3.1 billion Ghana cedis. Tier 2 pension fund. 3.1 billion Ghana cedis.
Very well. I've been told we have just less than 10 minutes to do this. But I would want us to look at the Gitmo 2 issue. It came up, and that's very relevant in our current times, because the 2 years for their stay here expired. Now the president is saying that we would have to go to Parliament when Parliament resumes to hear what Parliament says. Now, I'll start with Bobby on this. Here's the thing. So the 2 years. Sorry? Oh no, I can't leave you behind, Dr. Park. I'll come to you definitely. I just want. Oh, but
employment.
You started off with that, but I'll come to you and you have the opportunity to do that. But let's look at the Gitmo thing quickly. So obviously the natural, consequence of the expiration of the 2 years would be, okay, then return wherever you came from. Now the president is saying we would have to go back to Parliament here. What is that? Is that suggestive of a possibility of something else than the logical conclusion to the expiration of the agreement?
No.
2 years is up. No. What is the other opportunity? What's the other option?
The president, the answer the president gave is the answer I expected him to give as a lawyer and as a president.
He says that Gitmo detainees, the period is up, a decision has to be made, and that decision is under active examination. We need to be able to say something to Parliament when it resumes,
okay.
He said.
And so, you see, the implication for me of the president's answer is that after the Supreme Court case, Parliament ratified. What it means is that the presence of the Gitmo 2 is under the authority of Parliament, irrespective of whatever the executive will do. That is the import of the Supreme Court decision. That is an international agreement which, when it only would have force in Ghana if it's ratified by Parliament.
And it was ratified.
Now, as we stand now, the executive must send their position to Parliament, and for Parliament to either accept or reject it, irrespective of whether or not the APP is in the majority. It is very likely that whatever the government takes to Parliament, because they are in the majority, will be accepted. But for me, the import of the question is that it is not a decision for the executive to take. It's a decision for Parliament to take. So we will propose to Parliament and then see what Parliament would say. Now, we can only judge their true intention based on what is sent to Parliament. Because, and the reason why this has become, or everybody is waiting to see what the president, the executive would say.
Because of the position, that they took. Exactly.
But you recall that as soon as there was change of government, they said that we did not have a problem with Gitmo 2 coming to Ghana. We were saying that it should have gone through Parliament. That had been our standard. You see, but some communicators.
I'll come to you. Dr. Park.
You can't take it away from them. Between 2016, 2015, 2016, when this issue came up, the first communication that came out suggested that the MPP or the presidential candidate was not even aware. Suggested.
Yes.
And then later, there was evidence that the then candidate, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, had actually been briefed let me use that word, briefed, because there was an issue whether he was consulted or he was briefed or informed that this is what is going to happen. So he didn't have any say in it.
So he was just informed.
Yes, then the narrative changed. And they said, okay, we were informed that this is what is going to happen. But as a lawyer, you can't just take it and bring them in unless you go through Parliament. It was taken to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court agreed with the position. They have said that since the Supreme Court said we should take it to Parliament, we will take it to Parliament. Parliament ratified it. Now, as we stand now, as we sit here now, that agreement, the contents have remained national security document. Even the Supreme Court did not make it public.
Sure they didn't.
And so we do not know whether Ghana government is benefiting from their stay here, because eventually...
And what it says, if there's a possibility for a renewal, extension or whatever, we don't know.
Whatever decision of that executive will make will depend on whether or not the Ghana as a government is benefiting in any form. Now, interestingly for me...
Quickly, then I move here.
Just a second. Yeah. The comments that the United States president made about African countries...
maybe it'll be easier than to return.
Should be considered in taking this decision.
Definitely so.
Whether we keep them or not. If he says we are an whole country, it means that he's bringing us people that he doesn't want. We should take them back.
Quickly, Dr. Park. On the Gitmo.
Well, I felt that at least in the president's prepared comments, matters of security should have been included. But by and large, he only mentioned something in passing around being appalled and embarrassed about the activities of vigilante groups, which I think a lot more should even be done in that area. But I mean, I happen to be a member of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, so I have played a role in, what we have done. Well, yes, but we have argued all along that given the posture of this government, then in opposition, and the fact that, Parliament had ratified it and there were conditions that included the state, and of course the executive is supposed to act on behalf of all of us in matters of this nature, where the state has an option to return them. We didn't even think there should have been a second thought. So I perfectly still maintain our position that since we had been made to believe that there were undesirable elements and that we had erred gravely by accepting them, and that their presence here was going to make Ghana prone to attacks by extremist groups, if the time allowed has elapsed, simply, I don't know why there should be any sweat over this.
But that was their position. Your position was, let's keep them here. So why has that changed then?
Well, we said let's keep them here. You said they were not good enough. You are now in charge. They are still not good enough. So if their time allotted by law has elapsed, send them back. And I truly believe that if government chose today to do so, it would not be violating what we ratified in Parliament. Because government can only come back to us if it seeks for them to stay. As in them going back, I don't think that what we ratified prevents government from returning them. So if the president deems this to be important, quite clearly he has the capacity, he has the numbers, and the majority leader is also the Minister for Government Business. They could send us back to take the needed action. Very well. Quickly to Mr. Obiamo on this Gitmo.
I think that the MPP has been vindicated all along, because the major issue was if you enter into such an agreement, international treaty, Parliament should be the final stop. There was so much argument about the fact that the president has taken a decision and everything. Eventually, the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court said, bring it to Parliament. And it was brought to Parliament. So Parliament is the last stop. As to whether you still say that you were right in doing that, the Supreme Court has proven that you were wrong. You could be right in your opinion, but legally you were wrong. And the Supreme Court has said it. So we all have to follow the ruling of the Supreme Court. Now, the president is telling the whole world that I will have to come back to Parliament. He's coming back to Parliament with the position of the executive. If the majority in Parliament approves whatever decision that has been taken by the executive, then we move on. And thankfully,
and we are saying that
by Tuesday, Parliament will be resuming.
Sure.
So probably within days, we will get to know the position of the executive.
Yeah, but given the position earlier, which was, that a no, let's not have them here, Is there?
I mean, we were very careful. Of course, of course. If you listen, no, we were very careful in distinguishing between the official position and what you hear on air.
Is that so? By some communicators.
Of course, and they are entitled to interpret it their way. But the most, they are entitled to it. Some even base the arguments on religious grounds. You can't fault them.
Okay.
But we were saying that our candidate was briefed. He knew what they were doing. He expected that we go the full hog and get parliamentary ratification.
Very well.
And if in your own interpretation and advice of the Attorney General, you don't need a ratification, the Supreme Court has said you were wrong.
Very well. We need to take a break now, but we'll go. When we come back, we move on to other topics. But at this point, the ball is in the NPP's court. Let's see what happens with the Gitmo too. We'll be right back. You're watching New Day Saturday edition.
It's only second year. She's welcome.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We are live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we are live around the world online at 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I'll take some messages and then return to the panel quickly. This is Bibi Mustafa in Tichma. He says, good morning, Abna. The media encounter was a waste of time and resources. President Nana Addo only sought to throw dust into our eyes, which he didn't succeed. Typical example is that of the payment of Get Fund contractors, which turned out not to be true. Haruna in Wa says, good morning, Abna, and your panelists. I was disappointed with the journalist from Sunyani because I expected him to ask the president when he's going to pay the clients of DKM, God is Love, and other customers. Now, good morning, Abna. I think the president should be reminded that we are no more in campaign mode. President gathered the media personnel to launch his campaign for 2020 and nothing more. Good morning. This one is coming in. It says, good morning, Abna, and your panelists. After 1 year in office, the NPP is still fighting corruption. Meanwhile, they cannot point to a single constructive achievement to their credit. That's Osman and Tamale. Good morning to you, Abna, and your panel, especially to Honorable Obiamwa. Abna, the president's way of answering the question was fantastic, professional, as a renowned lawyer, and more importantly, as a statesman, because all answers were on point. That is Busua in Gushegu. Joe says, if you cancel ongoing projects and deny the people the benefits of such critical projects like hospitals, schools, roads, etc., and you call that savings, time will tell. That's Joe. You didn't say where you're coming from, but thanks for your message. Paul in Kumbungu says, the president's meeting the press was a great one. He says, anyway, if I had the opportunity, I would have asked the president about the unpaid salary arrears of teachers. I'll do one quick one and then we go to the panel. I was disappointed not only in President Nana Addo's answers, but some of the questions were needless and shouldn't have been asked in the first place. This one goes on to say, how could you ask, okay, you're talking about Kunkum Bagia here. I don't know how that comes in, but I'll just skip that. The president of Ghana has walked the talk by saving us a lot of money from the procurement issues. If it were the previous government, Ghana would have lost these huge sums to the looters. That's Blueprint in Esekado in Ketan. Thank you very much for your messages. Keep sending them through. We'll be reading them as we go along. We'll quickly move on now to look at the petroleum agreement with ExxonMobil, which, of course, is subject to Parliament's approval or ratification. I think in my intro, we talked about the relevant sections of the is it the Act, yes, which is the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act, which is looking at what the minister could do in this situation. Now, the reason why I'm giving this background is that the main controversy so far has to do with how the agreement was, or came into being, and the fact that there was talk about it being done through direct negotiations. Some have called, or some have questioned why it wasn't subjected to, or it didn't go through competitive public tender and all of that. Indeed, the Act provides for the minister you know, having the powers to do the direct negotiations, just as we have sole sourcing in the Procurement Act, which has been abused over the years. This is also a provision in there, which, if not treated well, could obviously be abused, and then issues about transparency and accountability would come up, contrary to what the provision for public tender seeks to do. So the question then is, Honorable Obiama, clearly there's the need for us to protect the state. And in doing so, particularly with this act, the point about where the minister has the powers to get involved in direct negotiations come into play. How do we ensure that that, you know, provision is not abused, so that indeed it's only strictly when the situation requires that we go there? Because clearly, I will refer to the act and then put things in perspective, yes, but that is the question to you as we move on to look at the further details.
In the first place, we have to commend the President, the Minister of Energy, GMPC, for concluding this matter and then bringing on board a giant in the industry. ExxonMobil is huge, and for Ghana to be able to conclude to do business with ExxonMobil shows to the whole world that this is really a serious country and we mean business. And for some of us, it's very instructive in the sense that if you're dealing with an American company, the rules are so strict that you, as the partner in this whole business, you can go to sleep. And most people would think that a good job has been done. I'm not saying that we should run down some countries or some companies, but if you look at their procurement rules, their engagement rules, their corruption issues, then if you're dealing with a big company from America, then you know that by and large, the right things have been done. So government must be commended for getting a giant like this involved in the oil industry. And they are bringing so much, coming to invest so much, and it's to our benefit. After it lost, this is the kind of confidence that is also coming in. So it's
but to put it in perspective also, that it's, I mean, negotiations or discussions started
that's where I'm coming to.
Yeah, way back.
Because of the issue about whether they were sole sourced or they were identified to come on board, the reason for such a situation has been provided. This process started before the act was even amended. And we were careful not for it to look retrospective, no matter where you have reached. Because if not concluded, start all over again, because this is what the law now says. So, one, we're looking at that aspect. Two, the minister had that leeway under the law to still deal with such persons. If they were coming just after the act had been passed, then you could raise some of these issues that even though you have a certain leeway, the act now expects that there should be some bidding, competitive bidding, and public tender, etc. But in the same breath, our friends would have said that they've done some work, and then when we came, we've just thrown the work out just because it's them. But thankfully, because it says ExxonMobil and a lot had gone on, except that there were major disagreements with the previous government. So the whole thing had to stall. We've managed to go over those things, and now they are on board. So as far as I'm concerned, everything appears okay, and thankfully they will come to us in Parliament. They will bring the agreement to us. We will scrutinize this. We would have to approve it, and we only approve it if we see that they've followed everything that they are required to follow.
Very well.
So I don't think, what I think we should be doing is to interrogate what they are bringing on board, how it's going to benefit us. How do we ensure, for instance, the local content aspect? How do we ensure that people on the ground also benefit, especially given the fact that it's a big player, and sometimes when they are bringing in, with the local people may not be able to match. But we've passed the law, and we should see how we make sure that it works. So that is the area that we should look at. $600 million at a go is quite huge. Very well. Yes.
That's fine. Bobby, let me come to you again on the discretionary, power that the minister exercises there. And again, I'm referring to the bit about the Procurement Act and how we've seen the sole sourcing provision being abused, even though, yes, it is a provision in there. Now here you have the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act 2016, Act 919, saying under 10.3, and for purposes of this discussion, I'll just read it out. It says, a petroleum agreement shall only be entered into after an open, transparent, and competitive public tender process. Then subsection 4 says, despite subsection 3, which is what I just read, the minister may, on stated reasons, decide not to enter into a petroleum agreement after the tender process as prescribed. Then further down in subsection 9, it says, despite subsection 3, the minister may, in consultation with the commission, determine that a petroleum agreement may be entered into by direct negotiations without public tender, where direct negotiations represent the most efficient manner to achieve optimal exploration, development, and production of petroleum resources in a defined area. Question then is there any set criteria, any guidelines that helps us to all, regardless of where you're coming from, decide that indeed, yes, this is a situation that represents the most efficient manner to achieve optimal so and so and so and so, so that under government A, we don't see ABC as being what represents, and then government B comes and says, well, we don't think that is, this is what it is. So it's like it allows for arbitrary application of the law, which ultimately won't augur well for the state. So question is, yes, the minister has complied with the provision of, there's nothing wrong with that legally, yes. But moving forward, and based on historical antecedents, again with the Public Procurement Act, how do we ensure that this new fine law is not abused in such a way that transparency, accountability issues are disregarded?
I have worked in this industry and discussed, been present, negotiated some of these petroleum agreements and blah, blah, blah. This is a very, very bespoke industry. It's not as if you are going to buy tomatoes on the market. Trust me. From the division of the, let me not use legal language, of the blocks,
yeah.
The advertisement, the tendering, the agreements. If you don't take care, it can take you 5 to 10 years to do all that. When you're a third world country like Ghana, and you don't have the means to even do the first stage of the seismic analysis, you are handicapped. And that is not a political issue. Sure. You are handicapped. If you decide to open up too much and go through public processes, you will be finding yourself in a very difficult position. And I'll explain why. You will notice that Exxon started these discussions in 2010 or so.
Well, yes, initially expressed interest in the Cosmos thing, and then
Yes, 2010. That was under the NDC. When the MPP came to power, a lot of people ordinarily would say, oh, why don't you also go and bring our people? But no, they decided to stick with, because the amounts involved is so much that until you are convinced that, until a company is convinced that they will reap something from it, they will not even waste time coming. You know, even approaching the Ministry of Energy, they have a petroleum division. Going through now the Petroleum Commission. If you don't take care, you can spend no less than $2 million. For nothing, as a company that is interested in it, for nothing. And so if a company is not assured of some level of commitment from the government, they will not get it. Government now is not in a position to say, okay, I would allow all of you to go through the entire process, $3 million, $5 million, and not get nothing. Nobody will come. Trust me, nobody will come. That is why the law allows for the minister to go through this route of doing direct negotiations, not on his own, in consultation with the Petroleum Commission, because the Petroleum Commission has the expertise. They have the expertise to look at the data, handpick which company they think has the necessary funds and the necessary expertise to do the work that will bring the benefit to the country. And so, like you said, it is not unlawful, but this approach, until Ghana gets to a certain stage, would be used a lot. Now,
which is why the criteria that is used to assess or determine that, yes, this, we're going for this because it represents the most efficient manner to achieve this is very critical.
But it is not, you see, what I was coming to, it's not a political decision. It's not a decision that can be taken by any minister, because the minister is not an expert.
He works in, he does it in consultation
with the Petroleum Commission.
But the Petroleum Commission is the appointment there, for instance, people have raised questions.
No, not the chief executive of the Petroleum Commission. He is also not necessarily an expert.
Sure.
The GMPC and the experts in the Petroleum Commission will do this analysis. And I'm talking from experience. Now, I'm happy that it is Exxon, which is an American, I'm happy it is an American company, not necessarily that it is Exxon. Because from my experience, it is very, very, very difficult, almost highly impossible for an American company doing this kind of business outside to engage in corrupt practices. It's highly, highly impossible, because with what I know,
there's a chance, there's a probability somewhere.
Let me tell you what I know. Even if they are picking you as a law firm to represent them, you must satisfy some conditions that no member of your law firm has any remote connection with the ruling government.
Politically
exposed person.
Not at all. They would go through that because they are accountable to an institution in America which has the right to conduct independent analysis of the entire process. And so my conclusion on this is that the law allows it. And the reason why the law allows it is that practically it becomes very cumbersome and expensive for a government to open these things to tender. And that is why you will notice that the MPP did not shift the post. They rather went into to renegotiate the terms. Fortunately, these petroleum agreements will be subject to parliamentary scrutiny. They will become public documents. Now we have public interest entities that are really interested in energy. They have the necessary expertise to analyze the petroleum agreement. And I have not cited the proposed agreements. If it comes out and there are problems with it, I am sure we'll all take them on. And now Ghanaians are becoming enlightened.
Enlightened.
Let me use, because 15 years ago, we hardly...
It's really knowledgeable in that sector.
That is why I said, no, what I meant was that I said that there are public interest entities that are interested in energy and petroleum. And so that is what I meant by we are becoming enlightened in that field. If the petroleum agreement, some of the terms are not beneficial to us, I'm sure a lot of us will raise those issues.
Very well. Now, let me quickly ask this. I'll come to you, Dr. Park, in a minute. But to follow up on that, this act came to repeal the PNDC law. Looking at the PNDC law, clearly there wasn't room for any public tender. So consistently over the years, it's been this. GMPC, So the drafters of this law clearly in their wisdom thought it necessary to bring this bit about public tender. Yet, here's what we are hearing, that looking at the industry as we are considering, it's of a certain nature which allows for certain, arrangements. So the question then is, why did we then put that?
Let me give you a simple
Dr. Park, I would want you to address that as well. So please note it down.
I was concluding my part on this.
Honorable, I'm setting up a TV station, and part of the rules is that I should put an advert in the papers for interview, etc. And you walk in, I will stop the advert. If you're dealing with ExxonMobil,
I'm highly...
Yes, if you're doing with ExxonMobil, and if you've reached this stage, going to advertise or asking people to come in again, for what?
When you have a law to comply with?
That's why the law has given you that room. This is a major, the most critical, competent company when it comes to...
Very well. Thanks for that. What will wrap up and I come to you, Doc, quickly.
See, I was saying that the room for abuse with this clause is not with the main player. The law requires that a minimum of 5%
for a local partner.
A local partner. Now they hype that it is Exxon. Nobody knows who that
local partner is.
So for me, you were talking about if this is a window for abuse. Whether or not the minister would open that 5% local to a public tender, that is where they can abuse the system. Because they may choose to give that 5% to their political cronies, who would only be on paper the owner. They will not have the necessary expertise, the necessary funds, but just to get at the end of the day 5% of the proceeds. That is where there is room for manipulation. As to the main player, I doubt there will be room for manipulation. I have no problem if the minister decides to enter into direct negotiation because of how. But is that 5%
that you have an issue?
That's exactly. You see, they have announced 70.
Let me move on to
25, 5.
Yeah.
They said a local Ghanaian entity. I didn't hear the name.
So yet to be selected.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So, yes, so no name is coming. If they do not go for public tender on that 5%,
it will be questionable.
That is where we would have a basis to say.
Tell us how they're going to choose that.
And that's why I was asking about the criteria that is set down for these things to happen.
That is what I'm answering. That for me, the criteria
is there.
We should focus on who that 5%, how that 5% is selected.
The local partner. Very well, Dr. Park.
There are blocks which have been given and standing idle because those who
do not have the means.
They don't have the means.
Exactly.
I agree with the commentary on this so far, and I thought that Obi Amwa came very close to overtly recognizing the fact that this was initiated when we were in power and in government.
He used the word concluded.
That is undisputed.
He deliberately avoided stating when the processes started.
Okay, so yes,
2015,
it started in 2015,
2016, and of course there were some disagreements, and I think one of the major disagreements had to do with revenue repatriation, where at the time the Bank of Ghana, had a certain stand, which I now hear has been waived. So definitely, perhaps this government, in its own way, has been able to also do what it needed to do to conclude the process. But by and large, I think we are all excited because we expect that as a resource that belongs to the people, it will be managed in a way that will benefit all of us. Indeed, the issue of local content must be taken very seriously. Being on the Public Accounts Committee, having looked at some of the reports from this sector, I would say that we were not satisfied with the way the local content aspects were being implemented. We have felt that a lot more should be done, more opportunities should be given to our people, and as far as the participation in the industry is concerned.
Right.
But you see, whilst we look at all of this and we are all looking forward to the benefits, and we are reminding ourselves of the potential pitfalls, admonishing ourselves as members of parliament to do a good job in scrutinizing the agreement when it comes before the House. I am still wondering why the agreement and the signage of that had to take place at Kempinski Hotel and had to last for 3 hours. I mean, don't we have a boardroom at the ministry or the commission, or maybe even if they wanted to do it at a place of high authority, the Flagstaff House?
Well, I went to the president.
Why did we have to go and do 3 hours at Kempinski, and who's paying for that? When we are to protect the public purse, everything counts. There was no need to do that.
That's relevant.
I mean, we agree that's a fair critique.
It
there
is.
really was
But
no
you're
need.
asking whose cost is it? Do you know whose cost is it to the? We don't know yet. Yes.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Why? Yeah.
But
why is it not? Is it not a state function? Is ExxonMobil not here on behalf to do business with the state?
No, we don't pay for the.
You carry on.
So who paid for the space and booked the hotel?
No, you're raising the issue, so you're raising it. So perhaps you tell us.
But be as it may.
You're talking about who paid for hotel expenses.
So we are excited about the 600 million.
Doc, please carry on.
We must manage that resource very well.
Let's be mindful of our time.
Governance is a continuum. So we have done our part. They have come to continue, and that is the way it should be, so that at the end of the day, the good people of this country would benefit. But we wait to see the details, and we would ask some of those questions.
Exactly.
And I would like to entreat civil society and other stakeholders in the industry to assist us with information so that we can do a good job and to ensure that we are not shortchanged, because, it is not true entirely that companies from America don't have a tendency to engage in acts of corruption?
Yes, everything is possible, but everything is
laws are
possible
more
as well. But yes, we need to take a break. But when we come back, I would want us to look at, I think there was a publication that was put out by the ministry, and it set out the issues and why, the reasons and all of that. But in the preamble at some point, it talks about the fact that the block has been relinquished twice by Vanco Energy and Lukoil, which has increased the risk profile of that. I would want us to look at that and how it plays into issues as we move along quickly, and then we'll move on to the other issues we've outlined for discussion. You're watching NewDay Saturday edition. We'll be right back.
In this modern age of business, you need all the help you can get to stay ahead. But different businesses require different solutions. So how do you know what your business needs?
Philosophy, Sani, Mariculture, Zinc Fires.
When I read, I know. When I read, I grow. When I
These are the words of 2008 2016 spelling bee.
I'm indomitable, cause I read. I'm indomitable, I'm a spelling bee. I'm indomitable, I know not defeat. When I fail, I will try till I win. Be young, be smart, be an architect of words.
The Spelling Bee shows this and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on TV3.
Welcome back. This is NewDay Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I'll take some messages and quickly return to the panel for their concluding remarks on the ExxonMobil petroleum agreement with Ghana. Martino in Ebura Dunkwal says, using SNIT as a baseline for proving the number of jobs created will be the ideal situation. However, an increase in enrollment on SNIT may not necessarily mean an increase in number of jobs created, but an increase in compliance by employers to pay the statutory payment of their employees. He said, this is your little contribution. We thank you so much. Good morning, Abna. The president does not have employment data after 1 year in power. Just to remind him of conversation in his boss office. Okay, this is Samson from Timpani. I'm not quite sure what that is. Good morning to you, Abna, and your panelists. President Anado indeed is a true and honest statesman. He answered all the questions perfectly. He was very honest to himself and answered the questions true, especially the question from the area of sports being asked by Mr. Patrick Osei-Ajimai. Okay. Good morning. It's very sad that the whole country will benefit by 15% while private man takes 5% and the investor gains 80%. A country we should invest in explore. It's 30. Okay, so yes.
70, 25, 5.
And then, yeah, okay. So a country should invest in exploration processes so we can gain more. Good morning. He says the NDC is only interested in equalizing their corrupt deeds, but that propaganda style will not work. The Supreme Court said they were wrong in the Gitmo case, and the NDC MP is still comfortably saying otherwise. Comfortable leaders in propaganda. That's Lydia in Tamale. The president says he's in to protect the public purse. I would be very pleased if he could let Ghanaians know how much the state spends on him and his appointees monthly as salaries for us to see whether he's truly protecting the public purse. That's Asanko in Santa Maria. I'll take the last one of the mails here and then come to you. I think money, okay, this is not full. Let's go on. He says, hi, Abna, respectfully, no. Okay, good morning to your panelists. My worry is that instead of us tackling socioeconomic issues concerning unemployment, health, poverty, illiteracy, corruption, infant mortality, etc., times on all global warming, I'm not quite getting this, unfortunately, but we'll pull the brakes on the messages here and return to the panel to conclude on our discussions regarding the ExxonMobil petroleum agreement with Ghana. So yes, before the break I talked about the fact that the a communication that was put out by the ministry talked about the fact that the Deepwater Cape 3 Points block, which is the block that will be assigned to ExxonMobil, has been relinquished twice by Vanco Energy and Luke Oil, which has increased the risk profile of the Deepwater Cape 3 Points block. And my question is, how much would this risk profile affect us going into this agreement with ExxonMobil, Honorable?
Well, on the face of it, you would say that they will come in from a stronger position, given that it will look like some have come and are not too interested in what is going on. But at the same time, if you have them coming on board as a big player, it shows that they still have confidence in the kind of arrangement that you have with them. They're ready to put in some investment for at least for you to gain something out of it, and for it not to be hanging and probably end up giving it out to maybe less endowed players, if I may put it that way. So even though there have been some issues, once we've managed to clear some of these things and they are on board, we just need to make sure that we all comply with what we have agreed to do and also derive the maximum benefit that we can from it. And if you look at the write-up, the ministry has said that to all intents and purposes, ExxonMobil is reputable, competent, capable, and has experience to be able to get involved in this kind of arrangement. And we should also play our part and make sure that we divide the most benefits that we can. We have to be transparent. We have to stick to the rules. In fact, I know I used to ask a lot of questions when Topical was acting Minister for Energy. Because we wanted to know what he was doing. Because if you say that a certain percentage should be reserved for local content, that's Ghanaians and Ghanaian companies operating in Ghana, then we should see that these things are being complied with. Of course, for the foreign partner, if he had his own way, he will come 100%. But the rules are that you hire certain services, certain works from the local side of the whole arrangement. And we have to make sure that we are complied with. The challenge is where it gets to a point where you don't have local partner having the capacity
to deliver.
Yeah, probably may even end up fronting or bringing people from the back door just to circumvent the law and just to satisfy what they are required to do. That is where the challenge is. So we should also have a way of building our capacity, investing in getting the local people more capacitated to be able to meet some of these arrangements.
Very well. That's fine. Thank you. Quickly, Bobby, on local content. ExxonMobil, we know, is huge, and in the publication here we're saying ExxonMobil, or it says that ExxonMobil is the world's largest integrated international oil company with daily production of 3.921 million barrels of oil equivalent, and with a revenue stream of $218.6 billion US dollars as of 2016. That's huge. So looking at this huge entity coming in, if we negotiate right regarding local content, we stand to gain a lot in terms of employment of our locals and even training and capacity building in this regard. How, moving forward, do you think we could actually capitalize in this area?
Unfortunately, I am very, very certain that the petroleum agreement has already been signed. They're only waiting to present it to Parliament.
Which is rather unfortunate then.
Most often than not, petroleum agreements have stabilization clauses, which states that the laws that are applicable at the time of the petroleum agreement will not be amended or altered to adversely affect the interests of the investor. And so we have our Local Content Act, which has been passed. The Local Content Act provides for a graduated form of ensuring that the suppliers, the employees, the consultants, by the investor, in terms of percentages, are Ghanaians.
Right.
If the investor decides not to employ or engage Ghanaians in terms of supply and everything, and in breach of that local content law, the investor is supposed to meet or justify that reason to the Petroleum Commission. I believe what we should be concentrating on as a country is seeing that this huge company is coming to set up. We must also build our systems to accommodate them. So the Petroleum Commission, for instance, must now be in a position to be able to police Exxon to make sure that they are actually complying with the provisions of the local content law, as it were. The Environmental Protection Agency should be able to man up, because trust me, they've not dealt with a company on the size of Exxon before.
Exactly. So that issue about intimidation even comes in. Not necessarily that ExxonMobil will set out to intimidate, but they themselves
if we have the expertise and the technologies, so the Ghana Navy, the Petroleum Commission, the Environmental Protection Agencies, these are the three. And there's a desk, I've forgotten the designation, but there's a desk at the Ministry of Energy. They are experts, trust me. When it comes, I have dealt with them before.
Except that one major expert has quit.
Oh.
She's not.
Yes, the one I was going to. She's gone to Exxon?
No,
okay.
Private parties. I don't
Very
know.
well. Okay. All right.
I don't know.
They have dealt with them before. They are experts. Experts. You can't go around them. They know the energy practice and law inside out. We must make sure our systems will be able to police ExxonMobil very, very well. In the absence of that, there will be a lot on paper, and then there will be nothing to show.
Exactly, which is
we've not seen the details of the petroleum agreement, but what I know is that they would also make sure that the 600 million they are come to put on the ground will not go to waste.
Course.
And so they will make sure that they are given enough protection when it comes to their choice of employees and all those things. But we must have the systems to make sure that we're able to police them and ensure compliance with our laws.
Very well. Dr. Park, yes, compliance with our laws certainly key to getting the most benefits from this arrangement.
Certainly so. That is why we have rules. That's why we have regulations. That is why we enter into agreements. And it is expected that all parties who are agreeable to those agreements would abide by what is expected of them. But I think that it is very important that even as we expect the draft agreement to come to Parliament for scrutiny and ratification, we continue to speak about the potential challenges. And I think that is largely based on, previous experiences and best practices from other parts of the world. And indeed, the issue of the environment certainly is one that we shouldn't take for granted. So we expect our institutions mandated to ensure that, indeed resources are extracted in a way that does not affect our natural environment negatively, are also up and doing. And I would say that whilst we know that ExxonMobil is a reputable company of global standing with a huge budget and expenditure, they've also had challenges in places where there's been spillage. So knowing all of this, we have to make sure that a resource does not become a curse to us. But the other area that I want to raise that we seem not to pay a lot of attention to is the cultural impact. We always talk about the environmental impact, but there's also a cultural impact. When you have these giant multinationals moving in, it has implications for the communities and the immediate persons that they come in contact with. And so we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I'm sure you are seeing that the dynamics in the western region, the oil enclave, have changed dramatically. I mean, the types of people who live there, the cost of accommodation, renting space, the types of businesses and establishments. And there's a sense that some people are losing out because perhaps we didn't factor in the cultural impact of this new industry. So as an anthropologist, I think that, I will be looking to see how we begin to also look at the cultural impact.
Could you elaborate on that some more, the cultural impact? Yes, and then how do we deal with that?
Well, the cultural impact, by and large, would be addressed by, doing some feasibility studies ahead, identifying members of those communities to be impacted, who, by and large, are also perhaps, if you like, less endowed, and trying to put in place mechanisms to support them to also benefit from that resource. Other than that, then they become sidelined and would have to migrate to make a living elsewhere. Okay. Because suddenly what they know and the type of environment
they are overtaken by.
Exactly. And they become an issue. Okay. So you begin to hear stories about an increase in prostitution, matters to do with crime, teachers not being able to pay their rent anymore because people who are getting better remuneration are getting all of that. And young men begin to feel disenfranchised, they begin to organize, and when they begin to react, that also presents an issue. So I think we need to start looking at the cultural impact of some of these developments. But all in all, we all agree that is a step in the right direction, and may Ghana be the beneficiary. And let's be transparent in who benefits from the local content,
the 5%,
and the processes by which those who are going to benefit should be made known to all of us, so that there will be fairness in as far as the benefits are concerned.
Right. So clearly, moving forward, the ball is in the court of Parliament. We are counting on Parliament to do a thorough job.
On Parliament.
A thorough job in scrutinizing.
Committee on Mines and Energy.
Sure.
Yes.
In scrutinizing this agreement.
They bring you a report, and then you can interrogate, but they are at the committee level.
Yeah. So at this point, parliamentarians, please, we are in your hands. The country is in your hands. We are looking up to you. Do a good job for us, and then let's see that.
Central engine.
Exactly. So let's see
of our democracy.
Something solid come out of this, and not become what has happened in the mining sector, for instance. I mean, the devastation that has been caused to the mining communities with very little to show for the mining that has gone on in this country for so long. So, parliamentarians, both of you, we are counting on you quickly, and then we move on.
I must commend Obi Amwa for making a point that I think we must emphasize.
That it started in 2015. I hope not. Okay, carry on.
Well, I'll allow it to pass then.
So what's that? Okay.
I'll allow it to pass.
Oh, that is what you were going to say.
No, I told you.
I wanted to talk about the emphasis you placed on the issue of transparency for the local content. Yeah. And the fact that we should be careful not to allow persons who may come across as being capable locally to be used as front men for other foreign companies. I think it's very important. Because time and again, we see these things happen. And it doesn't augur well for the purposes for which we create all of these fine laws. Yep. We shouldn't be the agents of deceit and fraud against our state. It's very unfortunate, but it happens.
Right. Cool. Thank you very much. So we are, we're done.
Or it has happened.
We're done with this.
It happens.
We'll move on. It's 9:02. We need to move on with the other two. So we'll go on to the Cash for Seats parliamentary probe. Interesting turn of events this weekend. This week, where Mr. Ashimotin was there. He took his turn. Ambassador Victor Gbeho also did. But then the expatriates, men and women, who were to appear before the committee failed to show up. I want to believe they didn't show up because they did not maybe receive the invitation or the summons or whatever it was. I can't believe that they got it and failed to show. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But if they did and chose not to show up, wouldn't that be, Dr. Park, let me start from you. Wouldn't that be highly disrespectful to the authority of Parliament?
It's contempt.
Well, first of all, I think that, Ghanaians clearly have developed genuine interest in following the proceedings as far as the Speaker's Committee looking into this matter is concerned. And while I wasn't particularly enthused regarding the President's comments on this issue, I feel very strongly that if it turns out that the expatriate business community was invited and the letter was so properly presented to them by the clerk of the committee, and they chose not to show up, then quite clearly there will have to be some sanctions. Because we are a nation of laws. We expect that people who come here should also respect our institutions, and if and when they are summoned to appear before a committee, they should not stand those summons up. Because if it really turns out, the implications, I'm afraid, will be quite dire for them as well as our democracy, because it will be the ultimate insult that our parliament invites persons to appear and respond, or at least indicate what they know about an ongoing investigation, and they choose, to give us the middle finger. I want to hope that there could be other reasons why they didn't appear. But as Obi said, they can be compelled to appear, and there can be severe sanctions. If you look at our
standing orders.
Our standing orders.
Okay. So we'll go into that. So can they be compelled? Is the next question I'm asking Honorable Obiama. Because I've looked at your standing orders. This is an ad hoc committee, and I don't know. I stand to be corrected, but I'm not sure if this committee has the powers of a court, to compel attendance.
Well, I want us to start from the beginning. Before this whole committee was set up, before a motion was even moved in Parliament, we had been told that this whole thing was a scam, an avenue for profiteering. Those are not my words. Extortion. And unfortunately for you, the media, you still say things like cash for seat probe.
It's come to be known as cash for seats.
It's convenient for you to say that, but that's how come the president reacted the way he reacted. Because the people are saying that they had to buy their seats to get close to the president or even to speak to him. And it's very offensive. That's number one. Now we get to Parliament, the motion is not about extortion. It's about levy and fees by the Ministry of Trade. If we are investigating levy and fees by the Ministry of Trade, then we go ahead to investigate. Now, the other side that I thought was a bit tricky. Fine. Full glare of cameras. We want to make it open. Everybody should come and say what he knows. But for a business person, with reputation and everything, they would raise serious objections if they think it's going to harm them. And if you listen to the presentation by Ambassador Beho and Ashim Morton, they came with their lawyer, and there were several instances the lawyer had to intervene. That, with all due respect, we don't think this is the way it should go. I heard it. I'm here to confirm. I haven't spoken to the chairman or members of the committee that they wanted to give evidence in camera. And as to whether the communication didn't go well, for us to look at that situation where on the first day the committee members were there but the whole place was empty. I think that somehow they should grant that wish. And then
modify the rules.
Modify the rules. Yes, like national security. It's not everything that we've been at the committee level. We expect it to be open. So we need to know what has really happened. Have their lawyers written that this is how.
Did they even get the summons?
They didn't even get a summons. But curiously, about 25 of them, nobody turned up. So the question is, does it mean that all the 25 did not receive the invitation? And if they receive the invitation, have they also consulted among themselves and they think that it will not really help them if they go this way? So, but the speaker gave the committee up to the time we resume. The committee may ask for extension, so we may try to vary the rules to make sure they get all the evidence that they can. But this whole thing, I don't think it's helped us much, except that for us, that's how we wanted it. Because there was so much noise about cover up, you want to hide something. Even when the president says he's gone into it and doesn't have a problem, why is the president saying that? But even those who made the allegations and who appeared before the committee, immediately after, they went on there, giving their own interpretation and then concluding that the whole thing is still a scam and profiteering. And when it comes to the president, you don't want him to respond.
So what is Parliament doing about it? Parliament can...
I had to draw attention
to the chairman about that, for instance?
And he said the chairman said he was calling for the tape. And they will see how they will go about it. But they had warned them that you should be careful you don't make prejudicial comments when we are part of this whole thing. But they couldn't be bothered. The following day I watched them on TV. They were all over the place, which meant that they were not interested in just coming out the facts. We're only interested in the propaganda and the mischief and what they will gain out of it.
The president was doing propaganda.
The president said
the president also, I mean, seriously, Honorable Obiamo, the president's comments
you accused his ministers of extortion, and you accuse him of selling seats. And they bring it up and he wants him to keep quiet.
But he can make comments, but not to criticize the outcome of
what is before the committee is not extortion.
Very well.
It's not profiteering.
That's fine.
It's about levy and fees.
That's fine. Let me.
It's about levy and fees. It's not about extortion. He has every right to talk about extortion.
Honorable members of parliament, thank you. Let me go to
his long-time friend,
the non-MP amongst you.
Yes. Do they have to pay?
Dr. Park, please. I'm going to Bobby now. Our time is running out. We need to quickly finish with this and go on to the other issue, the bomb scare. So, yes.
Bomb.
Or grenade scare, whichever it is. So, Bobby.
You found some other offensive weapons there.
The attendance of the expatriates. Yeah, it's quite perhaps critical to the committee's work. The committee has the 24th of January to finish its work. Honorable Obi is saying perhaps they could ask for an extension, but we don't know. Currently what we have is the 24th. Would the work of the committee, would they become helpless if they don't show up, the expatriates committee? And I'm asking this against the backdrop of the question I asked earlier about whether or not they can compel them to attend.
Let me be very blunt, maybe politically incorrect. I am very sure that none of the expatriates would appear before the committee. I am very sure. As it stands now, their mode of conducting these investigations, I am 100% sure none of them. In fact, I am quite convinced that it was easy for the majority to accept the minority's request for a bipartisan probe because they knew the experts won't come. I'm quite convinced. I'm being very blunt with you. You see, no, it's not. I suspect. Let me put it that way.
You suspect.
You see, somebody has paid money, 100,000 allegedly. No, they are not denying that payment was made.
The sponsorship.
It's the purpose. Yes, it's the purpose.
Yes.
There's no only for seats.
Yes.
Even first accommodation.
Okay.
So they sponsored.
Yes.
That's what they said.
I thought it was the list of.
I mean,
do we have the list of the expatriate companies?
No, we don't have it here.
It's never been published. Okay. So wait. They are not denying that they've paid money. As to what the money has been used for or why they were told to pay money is what is in contention. Now,
those are some of the names, at least for the table that we were talking about.
Okay. So we have. I can mention it, right? Because it's a public document, if you don't mind. The ministry issued. So we have paragraph 9. Without any show of disrespect or attempt to tag individuals and organizations as not being corporate responsible, the so-called for sale presidential table were the award-winning MD of Tigo Airtel, Amma Hari of IPMC, Salem Karmoni of Japan Motors, Ashok Mohanani of Poly Group, His Excellency Jerry Rollins, Alan Chema. So these are the people who were sitting with the presidency. Now, if you look at this, MD of Tigo Airtel, Amma Hari, Salem Karmoni, Ashok Mohanani, the initial list that came out when this thing was published, some of the company, their names are not here. But these are people who may have paid money in whatever form, for whatever reason. Now, do you honestly expect them to come and sit in front of the camera and say that, yes, we paid money, but either we were forced to pay or it was a means of sponsorship, or we were, because the money,
whatever answer they give would be politically
no, but you see the money exactly that is what I'm saying. Whatever answer they gave would be interpreted politically, because this issue was raised by the NDC. So if they come and give a statement that supports the NDC, they will be tagged as anti-government. If they come and give a statement that supports the government position. No, I won't say government. The organizers' position, because the government says that they were not involved in the organization. If they come to give a statement that supports the organizers' position, they'll be tagged as anti-NDC. And these are businessmen. Right. They know power is transient. Yeah. MPP may want to be in power forever, but definitely at a point in time, NDC will come to power. They don't want their businesses. It will not collapse. It will not collapse.
Prophecy.
No, it will not collapse.
Okay.
There is no way that any businessman want to be tagged politically, and this will be on record. They will not. Mind you that some of these payments, if they come to say some things, may have tax implications.
Well, we know they paid money.
But whatever, the reason,
it will have tax implications.
We don't know.
Exactly.
That's what.
And so they'll be very careful. I am very sure. At the end of the day, the committee, it will be politically incorrect for the committee to also say that we are subpoenaing you. If you don't come, we will charge you for contempt of parliament. Yes, exactly. Because at the end of the day, the constitution also reserves their right to come and sit and talk. You ask him a question, he says, I don't know. I don't recall. So the committee will not force them to come.
Fantastic. So the question then is, I mean, we do know that the purposes of such committees it's a fact-finding thing. You're trying to find. And people are supposed to come, give evidence unhindered, freely. So why don't we consider, like Honorable said, the option of perhaps modifying the rules and allowing for in-camera
whatever they
because
say,
at the end of the day, this is to go to reform or help, better our system. And indeed, that's what commissions, such commissions are set up for.
With all respect.
Don't be prejudicial, please.
No. In terms of us trying to get these experts to come.
Okay.
Hey, please, I don't want to be in contempt of parliament. What I'm saying is that our insistence on these experts to come, for me, it's a judicial.
Can it hurt the absence of the expertise? Can it hurt the committee's work?
It will hurt the committee's work. It will hurt the people who are making this allegation more, because at the end of the day, he who asserts must prove. You've made an allegation. Somebody was levied to pay money. The person has not come to say whether indeed I was levied or not. The committee will write a report. We heard the people who made the allegation. We heard the organizers. From the fact that is before it, it's inconclusive. Yeah. At the end of the day, the jury will still be out there.
Means they have something to hide.
No. Who has not something to hide?
Who has something to hide?
You see,
Dr. Park, please let him land and I come here.
Okay. So
you see, yes.
What would be
Dr.
the
Park,
reason why they wouldn't want?
No, we can't hazard guesses here. Just a minute. Please allow Bobby to land and then I'll come to you. Gentlemen, hold your horses. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. Please, hold your horses.
Respect our institution.
That's fine. We appreciate that. That's fine. Bobby, carry on.
The problem with your posture now is if the NDC as a party officially announces that is their posture, it will be interpreted as they being anti-expatriate. And you will need these people. You know you will need them. You will need them. Okay. And so at the end of the day,
I'll come to you, Doc. I'll come to you, Doc, please.
Involve them.
They have something to hide.
They will not come.
Very well, Doc.
At the end of the day,
gentlemen, please hold your horses. Let's have some order. Sure.
What is wrong with that?
Somebody else is private thing.
Doc, no. Honorable, just a minute. Doc.
Government collaborates.
We are at a point, Doc. Please, let's become. Carry on. Yes.
Even though personally, I have an opinion that the organizers could have gone around this in a better way. The initial communication from the now I'm being careful because I've been warned off your program that I should stop mentioning names.
Okay.
The initial communication from the ministry did not really help, and that is what hyped this allegation or this suspicion.
It gave room for further speculation. And then
first, they said it was private. Meanwhile, money was paid into a ministry account. Why is that? Why, if it's because you see, this is not. We are approached by
Bobby,
people who organize.
You haven't answered the question. Yes. Should they, the committee, modify its rules?
That is what I'm saying. Even if they modify it, these people will not come.
No, not show up.
You can't be.
But that yes.
No, I'm not talking about.
If a company is my client and they seek my opinion, I have different ways of telling them to respond to what is happening. You can say that we prefer to bring you a statement. To give you all the facts.
No, but the ministry's report would include that we received a statement from Mohanani Group. They said that they did not pay money. Or they said they paid money.
That's why I'm saying that I can, if I have a client, I can say that don't refuse to appear before them because of the implications.
But then go there
these are the
to
rules
say
that we
what?
think will help us.
But then go there to say what? Because like Bobby said,
go there. If it's the company's reputation at stake, even the MD doesn't need to appear. Anybody can appear before.
That's fine.
At the end of the day, my worry is
the content of the report.
That's why I'm saying that
which
we should not. Why I came in was the fact that you are certain we will not appear.
They will not. Yes, we don't know yet.
That's
we don't know.
Okay. I suspect that they will not appear because it will not
even
be
if it's
in
made
their
in
business
camera.
interest. Yes. Even if it's made in, because whatever statement they issue whether in camera or in public,
it'll be
one way or the other.
No, but the facts.
But if they remain mute on it, the jury will still be out there.
No, I don't think.
Continue with their business.
I don't think it will be in their interest to remain mute, because allegations have been leveled against them. So I don't think they
has it been made against them necessarily?
Extortion cannot be.
They were at the receiving end of the extortion claim.
They did not have extortion.
No, they said levy and fees by the Ministry of Trade, and I'm saying that. If we invite the company that we are investigating this and that we want to hear from you, I believe that the company should be prudent enough to take a position that we should not be seen to be snubbing parliamentary committee. But this is how we can cooperate with the committee. If now going the full hog that I want to sit for camera to be interrogated, because I was a bit taken aback when I heard a member of the committee telling a witness that we think we are coming to do comedy here. No MD wants to come to sit there for you to say.
It antagonizes them.
Yes. So that's why they have to sit in camera and then agree with the committee that these are the rules that will help you achieve your aim. If your aim is to the political one, for everybody to see me on camera, interrogation, back and forth, I will not advise my client. Even if I have to go to my client, I may do more talking than the client. Because I don't want to implicate him. I don't want him to do anything that will implicate him or that will put him in a situation where at the end of the day a report comes out and they are indicted. If it's because the rules are different. If it's proper court, then I have the leeway to be able to cross-examine this. But I'm bringing my client for you to just expose him and embarrass him for him to walk away.
Who is exposing and embarrassing?
But some of the issues which have come up.
So in conclusion, there's a possibility of there being the modification of it to allow
the committee halfway, so that the committee would finish its work and bring its report.
Because the timeline, I mean, 24th,
but if
in the absence of an extension,
why are you wasting everybody's time?
In the absence of an extension, that's concluding remarks on this, and then we move on. Dr. Park, your concluding remarks on this.
My concluding remarks is that I expect all of those who have been invited by the committee to appear and provide answers to the questions that are going to come up. It is in our collective interest that this matter is resolved in a way that will engender confidence in our system. And I think that it will be most unfortunate if they refuse not to, if you like, attend to the invitation by Mr. Speaker's committee.
And perhaps it will be even more grievous if Parliament is seen to just accept it like that and not do anything about it.
I'm saying it may be the political implication of whatever decision is taken by the committee. They will really think through it. Because if you force them, they will come and sit and not talk. And there's their constitutional right. If you don't force them, you'll be seen to be a lame duck. So it's quite a difficult thing for the committee. And that is why I believe at the end of the day, the jury will still be out to the public for us to make our own, individual decisions or form our own opinions.
Which opinions have been formed already by many. So the point is, but anyways.
When they started saying Carlos Gate, I said it's more Beho Gate.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Very well, that's fine. We're concluding this
so
this matter.
You should not think that they can politicize this or you can just throw it.
Quickly, we'll move on to...
See,
we're moving on to another...
Of course, they are not even from our side.
It is not about politics.
The organizers are not MPP.
Okay.
If there is
honorable members of Parliament, please.
The organizers
It's
are
done.
not being properly done.
We are moving on.
The redress is being sought. How does that make it political?
We are moving on, Dr. Park. Start us off, since you are in the mood. Start us off. We are looking at... We're moving on to the police interception of...
What party do they belong to?
Honorable,
are we talking about
Honorable Apak.
We are talking about an issue.
That's fine. I think we can...
Saga. Yes.
We can move on. Thank you
Gitmo.
very much. Let's move on. The police interception of objects, they say suspected to be explosives, and the subsequent arrests. Let me hear from you on that. But before that, I think we need to take a break. When we come back, we begin this discussion. You're watching and listening to NewDay Saturday Edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to NewDay Saturday Edition live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online around the world at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll move straight on to look at the story that broke this week in respect of some interception made by the police of objects suspected to be explosives and the subsequent arrest of 3 persons. Dr. Park, I'll start with you. Your general impressions about this. I mean, it causes scare.
I think that generally there are some jitters in as far as matters of security are concerned in this nation, and becoming aware of this development, where you can see some objects, but the pictures as published clearly. I mean, even those who have never seen live grenades before, but perhaps have even seen them in movies, will recognize what they are. And it's very worrying to think that persons who don't have the backing of law to carry such type of weapons, and if you like, mini bombs, as some have come to call them, had those in their possession. So I'm curious to hear the details about who they are, where they got those, if you like, objects from, what their motives may be, because the story is not quite complete, and I believe it is because it is still under investigation.
Developing.
But we have reason to worry, because the question this raises is how many more people in society have access to these types of objects. And I want to link that to another story that just came up, I think yesterday, that some offensive weapons were found in the vicinity of Kumasi Academy, Kumaka. So what is actually going on? And we have reason to worry. And if you look at some of the recent occurrences of how there's a propensity for groups and individuals to take the law into their own hands, and you juxtapose that with the presence of these kinds of, if you to borrow your word, objects. Certainly one cannot sleep easy. You are bound to sleep with one eye open. So I would want law enforcement and the security agencies to be up and doing, because I mean, we have a national security minister, national security coordinator, and the hierarchy and the persons appointed to those positions, I want to believe, have to be active to ensure that nothing untoward happens. But to put it mildly, this is a very disturbing development, and the sooner we pay more attention to what is going on, the better. The opposition we've talked about, with the fact that Ghanaians were identified to be frontline fighters with ISIS. We raised a number of issues. We issued statements. Government accused us of causing fear and panic. And some of the information filtering through is that some persons who were deemed to have been arrested regarding this story may have some links. Whether it is true or not, we wait to see.
We await the police reports on this.
But security matters must be taken seriously. And that is why I was a bit disappointed that in the president's prepared comments, which everyone agrees he delivered excellently.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, of course, prepared comments.
Nobody will ever take that away from them.
Prepared comments, but when it comes to the responses to the questions, that's a whole other matter. But be as it may, I would have assumed that the president certainly would have devoted a few lines to the security situation in the country, because it is something that has the potential of clawing back all the progress that we have made, all our dreams, our aspirations, our wishes. If we don't have the peace, certainly we will not be able to make our contribution in enhancing ourselves, and by so doing enhancing our nation. Obi, what did you just say?
Right. Your civic activism days.
Well, you never lose that.
I mean, exactly.
It's just the way it's supposed to be.
Development worker, always a development worker. But that's fine. Yeah. So, Bobby, quickly on this. I mean, clearly people were scared by this. It caused some level of fear and panic, and some have, perhaps attributed it to how it was covered or reported. I would want you to look at that angle. Do you think the media was circumspect in its reportage? Because some media houses went ahead to say they were grenades, when the police maintained that they are objects suspected to be explosives of various or varied types. They actually used the word varied, they said varied species. So they were yet to confirm, and indeed they are yet to confirm what those objects are. But we had this, news going on and on that some grenades had been found in the hands of some 3 men and all of that. What do you think about that, and how does that feed into how we deal with such, crisis, if you like, when they come?
As for the media, they would always put up stories, headlines that will sell their newspaper. So I'll not be in a position to say, they would always do it anyway. But I must admit that I was very impressed with how the police handled their communication on this. Because the IGP himself sat in that conference. And then that shows the level of seriousness with which they attached this issue, being the first time that something like of that nature had happened. The only time I have heard of grenade in Ghana was the unfortunate incident that happened to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But the IGP.
My mother was actually one of these young schoolgirls at that occurrence.
The IGP really handled his communication on this very well. And you notice that since then, they have not issued any statement on it. They are doing their investigations. And gradually, it's sort of restoring calm, that it's not as, we should not panic.
But some have also raised issue about that there's been silence after that.
Yes, but that is what they should do.
Some regular updates as in, yes, we are still investigating.
If they keep that news item traction, give it traction, people would always misinterpret what they've said. For me, it's better they will keep quiet, do that, because we don't know how many of these things are there. There are parts of this country that have been marked by security experts as trouble spots, flashpoint. Normally, when you hear of seizure of arms, you usually hear it in these areas. This one was found in Ablekumo, Odoko.
It's Odoko.
Odoko. It's not an area that it's not a flashpoint. And that is where I was concerned a bit. Wow, in Odoko, it means that wherever it was carried from, it was transported and brought there. And so they have managed it in such a way that I think they'll be in a position to really investigate, get to the bottom of this, find out when these people came into the country, whether they have any links, whether they do. And I'm sure that at the end of the investigations, something will come out of it. You see, these people have been kept for more than 48 hours. It's very likely the police have taken them to court for an order for remand. I'm 100% sure. The fact that they managed to keeping
them beyond that,
yes, will be unlawful. So I'm very sure they've done that.
And they've done that outside of the media.
Exactly.
The media glare.
They have done that outside of the media glare. Goes to show how professional they are handling it.
That is, if it's been done.
Well,
yes,
they know too much not to do that. They know too much because these people.
The 48 hours, they will not be counting the weekend.
I think they were arrested last week, Monday. No, this Monday.
It was this Monday.
Yes, they were arrested on Monday.
Was it
because
Monday?
Yes, Monday.
It was middle of the week.
No, it was on Monday because I was going to that area and I saw a lot of police barriers. So I was like, what is happening? And then I was told that this is so there. I was in that area Monday. They've kept them beyond 48 hours. And the police know too much not to do the needful, because now, civil society, everybody is watching when they keep people. And so if they've been able to do that even outside the eyes of the media, it shows how professional they are handling it. And I think that we must be calm, step back, and allow the police and the security agencies to do their work. At the end of the day, they were able to get this. It's not as if they were caught when they were being transported. They actually followed their intelligence, did their investigation, went to where these things are kept, and then arrested the people. It means that they had knowledge of this for some time.
Well, they said it was based on tip-off, which should be distinguished from intelligence work.
No, but police plant these people in. I have said it before. My father was a police officer, so I know how they work. You were a child of
the you said depot.
Yes, but every area in this country, police have planted informants. Then they walk around as if they are junkie, but they know what if they suspect any movements that are suspicious, they quickly inform the police. So tip-offs are part of police intelligence operations. They don't people just don't call them and tell them we've seen a bomb here. No.
The reason I said this because I think I listened to the Director General Public Affairs, and that was the impression he gave, that it was, like a private person, not part, and for that matter, he was commending the vigilance of the ordinary citizen.
Yes. So if that is what happened, at least they've managed the situation very, very well. And I think we should commend them for that. The media should be very circumspect, because in reporting some of these things, you notice that they will end up causing more fear and panic. Then people would come out saying grenades. In fact, I doubt it's true, but there was some social media reportage about how these objects were kept under a tree, because they said they won't take it to the room because it will blast and all of that. And they're saying that they are objects that are used for galamsey operations to blast whatever. So the police will do their investigation and they will give us the report. I don't think there's any need for us to worry. The way they've handled this, I'm very happy and comfortable. So I will sleep with 2 eyes open, Doc, until further notice. Okay, so you're sleeping with 2 eyes open, so you're being very much careful then.
I'll be looking out on your behalf.
So then you don't trust the system.
No, open. Yes, watching what will come out of it.
I'll sleep with while you sleep.
Very well. Honorable Obiamo, let's hear you on this one.
Well, I will look at the story itself, how it's been managed, and the way forward. I was a bit uncomfortable with how the story came up in the first place. And it's not that the IGP just jumped in. The initial story was from a particular police station, and somehow it had been put on social media as to how they allowed anybody to take pictures to put on social media. Right from the beginning, I think it's very uncomfortable. To the extent that even the statements from that police station was also put on social media. I read it. It's even here with even all the grammatical errors and those things. So initially there was that panic, and I thought it wasn't handled well. Handled well in the sense that if you had people harboring these things, that initial story can let them be alert, either escape or put them somewhere. I was expecting the police to have maybe sent the information to their superiors, contacted them, and then they would tell them how they should go about this. The initial thing was scary. Then the IGP came in. I remember even at the press conference, somebody asked and he said that they will investigate how the story came on social media, which meant that they were not really comfortable with how the story broke. But beyond that, we've been assured that we are doing more investigations. I mean, for the investigations, I really want to know how these things came in. Is it in commercial quantity? Is it just a small number? Who is profiting from this? And our borders and our entry points, how have they managed for such things to be found here? For how long have they been here? All these issues would have to come up. That's why the IGP is saying that there's more to do. They have to do further investigations. And if they have to brief us and when it's necessary, they will do it. So for the management, you will say that by and large, they've tried to manage it, apart from the initial hiccup, because initially it wasn't handled well. And then I believe that as we go to court, as we have more information, the whole world will know how far we've gone in managing this, and whether indeed there's any link to ISIS, as the initial comment suggested, or it's just some people who want to do their own business, who want to do their own business and make some money. People profit from chaos.
Yes, indeed.
When they think, oh, this thing can sell, they will find a way of bringing them in to also make money.
Right.
So the intent and everything should be looked at, and then we plug the loopholes.
Very well.
Yeah.
Very well. I will, on that point about the link to ISIS, some security experts have said, I mean, in their view, that Ghana is not susceptible to attacks from ISIS or by ISIS, given whatever reasons they have, but rather internal challenges is what we should be, worried about. Because like you're saying, people, I mean, certain things can thrive.
I don't really agree with them. Sorry to cut you. I don't really agree with them, but because our neighbors have had such incidents, and those who attack them, they go for where foreigners congregate. You understand? So where they congregate may be a target, just because they want to send a message that we are against you, we don't like your culture, or we have a fight with you. So Ghana may not be a target, but they will want to send a message, as they've done in our neighboring countries.
Right.
Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Niger, ECOWAS region, we've experienced these things.
So we are just as susceptible.
We are just as susceptible. So we should prepare for it, and also there used to be guidelines. That's why nowadays you enter hotels, they have to search every part of your car, and even put the gadgets under the car to make sure they are not carrying any equipment that will explode or anything. So it means we've been on the alert because of what has happened elsewhere, and we should not lose our guard or say that we are not target of ISIS. We could be target of other groups.
Sure.
Just those who think they have beef with the certain countries or Western world or whatever.
Try to send a message to them.
Send a message to them, and they go for specific targets.
Very well.
And you never know the collateral damage.
Exactly.
Yes.
It could be, yes, definitely. And to Bobby, the bit about the legal regime, governing or surrounding or regulating the, ownership of guns, small arms and all, because really we can't look at this and not talk about the proliferation of arms and other things. We seem to be grappling with that, clearly.
I think the failure is how the arms are manufactured and how they are distributed. You see, the police is the institution that registers people who own arms. They have the various regimes. If you go to them, you fill a form, you must bring a police report, you must go through the due process for them to satisfy themselves that you are not going to use it for any unlawful activity except for self-protection. If you don't come to them as a police, they will not come to you and ask you whether you have arms. I will not blame them. But
there's a small arms commission or something like that, which is also, so clearly they have the responsibility as well.
They have the responsibility, but all that you see is that every year or periodically they issue reports that there are so many arms and they are being scattered. They came from, I've read I don't remember which year's report, that suggested that the reason why Ghana seems to have all these things is because of the civil wars that ended
the neighboring countries.
In the neighboring countries. So they were brought here, because here was safe. The people were being chased from their countries. They brought it, and they came from unapproved routes along the border. They may be difficult to police because we have a very, to some extent, a porous boundary line, which smugglers use for various nefarious activities. And so the cost, it's a responsibility for both the SERPs, the customs, and more importantly, the local citizenry.
Very well.
Because that is where, if you know there's somebody who lives in your house, in your vicinity, let me say this, Abna, it's very important for me. I beg you. Recently, there's somebody who is a public figure who in a video stood in front of his house and was firing gunshot that he is warning somebody. Nothing has been done. Again, so what message are you sending to people?
Service. Yes,
nothing has been done.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
So what message are you sending to others?
Dr. Apak, take us home. You have the last minute.
Well, I think that we can all agree that matters of security are important. Right. I think I would agree with my two colleagues that in this case, the police definitely did a job that is commendable. Let's hope that it's replicated in all of the other situations that have caused some of us to worry a bit.
The vigilante.
Yes, like how we feel that they've been a bit soft when it comes to dealing with these groups that we've now come to describe as vigilante groups. But we have a role as citizens to also make sure that we provide information to law enforcement if and when we become aware of certain movements, the presence of certain personalities, activities in our neighborhoods.
But that requires a certain level of you being
yes, but that is
engaged.
why we have to be citizens. In fact, it is the Constitution mandates us to play our role as citizens, because we can't just sit there and expect the state or the government of the day to have to do everything. We must also complement in playing our role to ensure that we can have the peace we need to be able to achieve our goals and objectives.
Thank you. On that beautiful note, we bring the conversation to a close.
Thank you
so much for spending your Saturday morning with us. We appreciate your comments, even though we couldn't read them all, but we thank you so much, and we'll be back same time, same place next week. But before that, let me say a big thank you to the panel, Honorable Obi Amwa, Bobby Banson, and Honorable Dr. Clement Apak. Thank you so much. So we'll see you here next week. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.